The meeting will be videotaped. A Board of Education meeting is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting. Anyone wishing to address the board may do so during one of the 2 public comment periods, and the board will determine whether to respond at that time or defer the issues raised to a later time. Anyone addressing the board is asked to state his or her name and use the microphones provided, which are up here, for audience members so that those unable to attend meetings will be able to hear what transpired. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a civil manner. The board will not permit discussions of individual district personnel or students in public sessions. The board asks each speaker to be concise and reserves the right to limit the amount of time for each speaker to 3 minutes. Any questions should be directed to the board, not to administrators or other staff members. It is up to the board to determine what is appropriate to discuss and distribute at its meetings. So first off, let me just say thank you to any veterans who are with us tonight for Veterans Day. Any veterans here? All right, well, for those watching us on YouTube, thank you for your service. Okay. Do I have any additions to the agenda? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the minutes of the October 5th, 2017 regular meeting.
So moved. I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We're going to move on to the consent agenda. It's going to be items 3.1 through 4.1. I need a motion to approve the treasurer's report, the financial report, consideration of claims and authorizing the district treasurer to pay the schedule of claims, the transportation report, the cafeteria report, the 2018-19 budget calendar as recommended by the business manager and superintendent. I need a motion to accept the tax collector's report and file the necessary copies with state and local agencies, as well as the athletic director.
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion?
Um,
I'll turn off my mic.
Thank you for putting together the budget calendar and with the changes that we had talked about in prior meetings with the additional steps for this year.
Further discussion?
That will be part of my superintendent's update, that first part that we talked about with budget.
Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have come to our first opportunity for community participation, and we will start with any questions, answer, and follow-up from the October 5th meeting. I'll turn that to Michelle.
We have one follow-up from the September meeting, actually. And I'd like to read an email that I wrote to the HDA DOE Advisory Committee so that it can be publicly on record. After looking into the statements made in the September board meeting and discussing them during our executive session, we have found the allegations of immoral and unethical behavior to be unsupported by any evidence. As with all statements, we put time into determining the basis behind them. We do this with help from the administration and want to let you all know that this happened. We are grateful for all you do for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Okay. We'll move on to the teacher presentations. Mr. Rains and Vicky Motes will be presenting on summer curriculum development. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Rains, Ms. Motes, Mr. Sunderman, and Ms. Merrill, sorry, on summer curriculum development projects. So I'll turn it over to you all. I'll turn my microphone on.
Oh, that means they need one. Stay over here? Oh, okay. Can we stay over here?
Do I have to speak in the microphone?
Oh, yes, you do.
Just hold it if you want.
I forget to say your name.
Okay. Hi. Hello? Yeah? Okay. Up? Tired? Okay. Hi, I'm Vicki Most. I'm a special education teacher. And this is our summer curriculum project. Dan Rain's English teacher. So our summer curriculum project was on our 12-1-1 ninth grade English class. We worked on modifying our curriculum for our ninth grade English class. We really just focused on meeting the needs for our kids and still keeping it a ninth grade English class. We have a smaller class size, so we can really focus on what our kids need, giving them their accommodations, giving them that one-on-one time that they need.
Here you'll see on the left kind of the main topics that we put into a curriculum map, and on the right some of the daily activities we try to go through, or activities we try to go through on a regular basis, whether it be weekly or daily. I'll start with some of the activities that we go through regularly, such as handwriting. We focus on that at least once a week so that the students can build the skill of writing legibly and also to be able to model for them proper punctuation and other writing skills. Vocabulary for building vocabulary and helping them learn meanings and using new words in context. We focus on grammar regularly and creative writing, just to give them an opportunity to be able to write and give them a chance to use their imaginations a little bit and have fun while writing. As far as the topics on the left, some of the things that we addressed in our map, we added a story at the beginning that the other ninth grade classes don't do, but The Most Dangerous Game, to talk about plot structure, and then we read the novel of Mice and Men, and Vicki's going to talk about the career project.
Our career project is something we're working on right now. It's a research-based project where the kids get to research a bunch of careers that they're interested in based on their skills and interests. From that, they narrow it down to one career, and then they do a research paper on that. So from the research paper, they look into all main topics of research, so education needed, wages, and job outlook. From that, they can really make a decision after high school if that's something they want to pursue. So we're kind of preparing them for after HCS, what they want to do, giving them a full idea of what's out there. And I think that's it. Any questions? Okay.
Outstanding.
Thank you. All the way up. We'll just start. Yes.
Okay. I'm Amanda Sunderman, and this is my teammate, Liz Merrill. She's been around a little longer than me. So a little history on what we wanted to do. We requested a curriculum grant to take a traditional writing workshop unit, the narrative unit, that's been done for a number of years, and it's done in each grade level at the beginning of the year. And since we've had writing workshop in place for about 10 years, we felt that it was time to up the rigor of what was happening in 5th grade. So we looked into different ways to take the idea of a personal narrative and make it more complex. I don't want to steal everything that Liz is going to say here, so. I wasn't listening to what you said. Feel free to go on. Okay.
So these were the learning outcomes. These were the learning outcomes that we were hoping for the students to get through this new project. A deeper understanding of the narrative writing, perseverance, confidence as writers, sometimes the personal narrative. Children were shy to share personal stories, and some creative expression. This is the plot map that we kind of based our narrative writing on. It ties nicely to the reading workshop.
So this is where we start to take it up a notch. So you saw the traditional plot where you have the exposition, the rising action, the climax of the story. What we did is we rewrote a unit so that our students are writing choose your own adventures, and we taught them how to drive a plot forward through a fractured plot. So instead of just the A, B, C, this happens, what happens now is they have their exposition where they set up a story, then their character is actually given choices. And from that, the plot fractures off into other possibilities with multiple endings. And so what's really cool about this is you go from kind of a 1 to 5 page personal narrative, which is great for 5th grade. We have students that have 25, 40 paragraph stories going right now. And they've written it with enthusiasm and passion. And so right now we have the rough drafts done, and then we're using that throughout the year as a tool for our teaching.
And we got them to write 5 narratives when they think they're only writing 1.
Okay, so we thought it would be fun for you to experience a little bit of what this project looks like. Okay, so your name is Hero, and this is written by a student, by the way. Your name is Hero, and you are 14 years old. You live in Idellatown, Scotland. You live with your mom, Karen, and no dad. You don't have any friends, and you spend most of the time outside. One day, you are outside hiking when you see a hidden cave. Being a curious boy, you walk towards the cave. You step in and see a decorated room filled with ancient statues and other items. There's a beautiful glowing blue stone. Should you touch the stone? We'll turn to page 3, or don't touch the stone and go home. Any preferences?
Touch the stone.
Fair enough, so click on the... I did. Okay, so you touch the stone, and it sends you to a different planet. You look around at the giant city around you. You don't see anyone, and it all looks abandoned. There's a scientist walking to an alley. You wonder, what is he doing? He stands there for a while. You see him come back out again and walk right back in. Now you're pretty confused. You wonder what he's doing. And this could go on, and we could take you through a few more options of this plot. But you get the idea. This took a lot of students who are reluctant writers, and it upped the level, and it opened up the creative possibilities for them. And then what we're doing with these chapter books is we're using them all day to teach grammar, punctuation, editing for the students at a personalized level. And then our end goal that we're still working out the details for, it's hyperlinked in a funny way, is that we're writing a grant to have these turned into chapter books that are published with a hardcover, and our goal is to be able to do 2, one for the kid to take home, and then 1 hopefully to set up in the elementary school library. And it's that idea of persevering through a year-long project, writing, taking a break, going back to it, revising it, enriching it. So it's a great project. Any questions? Anything to add, Liz?
Does anyone not touch the blue stone?
Well, I'm just going to say that some exciting things happened if you didn't touch the blue stone. There was a ninja that jumped at you out of the woods on your way home. But now you'll never, know that story.
Lots of magical moments and fantasies.
I have to buy it when it comes out.
Right. I'm sure they would be happy to sell it to you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Great, thank you. Now we go to the portion of the community participation that allows for the general public to make any statements. And please, I just remind you of the communication protocols that I read at the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, we go over there? Sorry, I thought there was somebody.
Good evening. My name is Emily. I am a parent of 2 very happy young HCS students, and I wanted to express to the board my support for extending the superintendent's contract, maybe another 4 years, hopefully. And here's why. Every morning after he warmly greets our students at this wonderful school, he gets to work building a better organized, more fiscally sound, and more accountable, and more innovative school for our children. He has brought in new grant money and balanced our finances. He has led an important mission, the strategic plan, to enlist the brainpower and passion of the broader community to make Hamilton Central School a place where all students thrive. Many parents have been impressed by the superintendent's effort to listen and to act to address our problems, whether it be for special education or issues of fairness in the classroom. Under his watch, HCS will continue to be more organized, more accountable, and more innovative well into the future. And every day in the halls of HCS, our school leader will continue to make each child feel welcome. I expect the board to judge the extension of the superintendent's contract through our eyes, the taxpayers, and the children you have been elected to represent. And I have 2 questions that at some point in the future I'd like answered. 1, what criteria do you have or do you use for extending the superintendent's contract? And what role does evidence play in that criteria? And 2, what role does the impact on students play as you make your decision on the leadership? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Lee Hope. I have 2 kids. I have a 3rd grader and a 5th grader. And I just wanted to make a comment about our teachers at Hamilton Central. So as strongly as some of you feel, or as strongly as you all feel about someone who has been in our community for less than 3 years, I feel about our teachers at Hamilton Central, some of whom have been friends for nearly a decade. I have had overwhelmingly positive experiences with many of our teachers, not only at our school, but in the community. What I love about our teachers is how invested they are in our community, not just because they say they are, or greet people in the parking lot, but because of their actions outside of school over the years. So I just want to say thank you to all of our teachers. There are community members out there who do support you. And to the board, please consider the voices of our teachers when thinking about extending contracts.
Thank you.
Yeah, but... Okay, that's... It's close.
What did you say? We know we're going to invest in sound.
No, we haven't. We just didn't want to put it up yet. Gotta play with it and learn.
Bridget Dawkins. I just want to personally thank Mr. Daniel Raines for all of the work he has done on Strategic Planning Committee. I'm a part of that committee. He's gone above and beyond, and I don't know if he gets as much credit as he deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sorry.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Catania. For those of you who don't know me, I have 4 kids in the school system now. And I just wanted to come and show a voice of support for Dr. A. He has helped my family deal with some things in the school that were not quite fair and seemed arbitrary, and we really appreciate his willingness to roll up his sleeves, get everyone involved in problem solving in a very pragmatic approach. And so I just want to voice my support for Dr. A. I also want to say I support all the teachers that have come in contact at the school. You guys do so much. Thank you.
Allison Kenyon. I have 3 children in the school, and I wasn't going to speak, and I don't think I need to say much. I don't think we have to go back and forth with our support, not support, this or that. It's really the board's job to make that extension, and I'm sure they have reasons of why they will or will not. I also understand from the president's discussion in the beginning that speaking about a personnel member is not allowed at these meetings. So I just want to remind people that when we're using names, it hasn't been allowed in the past, and I don't think it should be.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. Under personnel, we have a number of appointments, a leave of absence, and some other folks to appoint. So do I need to do these one by one? I don't, okay.
Nice try.
I know, okay. I need a motion to approve the appointment of Christopher Rogers as a probationary director of technology at a salary of $82,000, effective to be determined as recommended by the superintendent.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion? I think we want to know the to be determined.
Yeah, typically, experienced people will not resign a position until they are appointed at a board meeting. And Mr. Rogers asked me to let him know once he was appointed, then he would talk to his employer about a separation date. So it could be as long as 30 days or as short as 2 weeks. And that would depend if they have somebody on the docket ready to replace it. So it's as long as 30, but as short as 2 weeks.
So then, this is an administrative position, and help me understand how the rest of this shakes out.
Yes.
For this department.
You off?
I'm off.
You're on.
For the technology department, we have a part-time director right now who will leave. We will give him 2 or 3 days to transition with Mr. Rogers. We will also have 4 days a week support from the MORIC. And what we'll ask Mr. Rogers to do is to assess the situation for about a month, probably or a little longer, to assess the situation, get back to me with a report, and I will report to the board in terms of the level of support that he needs. We expect that it would be, well, we won't expect anything. We'll get a report from him in order to be fair to him. There are a lot of needs that, there are a lot of things that we're working on, and I do have a technology update to kind of bring you up to speed as to where we are with the leadership of Dr. Starr and where he's brought us so far.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, I need a motion to approve the appointment, I need a motion to revise Stephanie Pope's appointment to reflect her salary starting at step 16 of the salary schedule effective September 1st, 2017, as recommended by the Director of PBS and Superintendent.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? I need a motion to approve the appointment of Emily Freeth as a probationary part-time .33 FTE teacher on special assignment at step 1 effective October 18th, 2017 through June 30th, 2018, as recommended by the secondary principal and superintendent.
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yes, could you explain the special, oops, my apologies. Could you explain the teacher on special assignment as opposed to just making her 1.0 as a teacher? I realize that it's...
That was my fault.
Oh.
Keep going, I'm sorry.
She's got a .67 as a social studies teacher and .33 as a special assignment. It would be helpful to know how that distinguishes from being 1.0.
Okay, it does not. You add it up, it's 1.0, but the position that is firm and consistent is the social studies position. She's trained in a special reading where she will be providing services that would likely not go forward next year. And so that .33 would disappear, but the .67 would remain constant. And so she would be on special assignment, but she is 1.0. But you break it that way so that when one position ends, the consistency for which she was originally hired remains constant.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the appointment of Heather Vergara as a probationary full-time attendance aide effective November 13th, 2017 at step 5 of the salary schedule as recommended by the secondary principal and superintendent.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the appointment of the following as long-term substitutes as recommended by the secondary principal and superintendent. Elizabeth Susan Jorger, October 2nd through December 31st, 2017 for Amy Jerome, and Victoria Magonis, January 29th through June 30th, 2018, which are tentative dates for Monica Chamberlain.
I'll move. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve Scott Wallace, Mark Lewis, and Courtney Buchanan to the substitute list as recommended by the head bus driver, secondary principal, and superintendent.
Move.
Second.
Discussion?
So these are substitute bus driver? Two of them.
Two of them are.
Two of them. Okay. That's great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I need a motion to approve Donna Moran, Nancy Schultz, and Julie Dudrick as volunteer advisors for the middle school production of Disney's High School Musical Junior on Friday, December 15th, 2017, as recommended by the secondary principal and superintendent.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve a leave of absence for Monica Chamberlain for child rearing purposes with tentative dates of January 28th through June 30th, 2018.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the recommendation of the committees on special education and preschool special education, and any particular students need to be discussed. They should be done in executive session.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, like I said, any discussion will be held in executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're going to have a discussion item. This is the draft plan of the Hamilton Central School District Counseling Program.
Last school year, one of the goals, one of the superintendent's goals or district goals was to update the counseling plan and put one together and ultimately put it online that updated and spoke to the things that they do. The secondary principal, elementary principal, and the counseling department kind of buckled down and got it done. And this is bringing it to the board's attention for ultimately to approve it, and that would be the Hamilton guidance plan. It is revised from the old plan, And this one speaks to the evolvement of what used to be guidance counselor to school counselor and some of the things that they've done. You can imagine the way public education has shifted in so many different ways over the years. That has happened in the counseling department as well.
Any other discussion on this? Oh, sorry.
Yes, as long as we're talking about the counseling department. I've been, for the last 3 weeks, I've initiated my career as a substitute. I can't substitute at Hamilton Central School, so I'm substituting at other area schools that shall remain nameless. But I've spoken to quite a few juniors and seniors in the last 3 weeks. And I just want to do a shout out to our counseling department, because our kids know what they're going through. They know the college admissions process, and I've been shocked and appalled and saddened as I speak to juniors and seniors in other schools at how little they seem to know about the process, and it's a shame. But our counselors deserve enormous credit, because we are light years ahead of our neighbors.
Thank you.
And I just had a couple questions reading over it. Under some of the assessment parts, for example, under career domain, annual assessment, it says counselor and teacher observations of students in classroom setting and individually, and student and parent feedback. You know, I think that's a good beginning point. I'm just not sure, I don't think it's clear by reading this how that assesses the criteria. So it's not a criticism, it's not a complaint. As someone outside looking at it, it's hard for me to then understand how that will then assess that area. I guess I look at goals to try to be more measurable, and those, the academic one is very clear. The others, maybe there can be more language to explain it to an outsider better.
Could you refresh me to the section you're reading?
Well, the one I'm looking at right now is page 22.
Okay.
There are one or two others as well. It's the same item, it's just the annual assessment.
Any additional comments?
Can I just ask just one more question? Is this a reflection of what's happening now, or is this a reflection of a goal and a vision for what will happen?
I'm going to ask.
Sure. There are many elements in this draft plan that they are doing now, but it's also a vision of what they would like to do and align to the ASCA standards.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything further on the counseling plan?
Okay. So will we approve this next time then? You said eventual approval. When would it come for approval?
It'll come from approval after the review of some of the comments that were made tonight, and then it would probably go in your weekly update, and then in your board packet, and then now that may be in December, or it may not be, given what's going on in this time of year for college and all of that. Right.
Okay, so that was a discussion item only. I need a motion to approve the 2017-18 Professional Development Plan as recommended by the PDP Committee and Superintendent.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion?
Can you give me an overview so that I understand it better?
Sure.
Just a high-level overview. I did look through it, but I'm also interested in costs with consultants that were listed.
Right.
So if you can give me that would be great.
The professional development plan is required by New York State. It's also required for us, Hamilton Central School, to be able to give teachers who need hours toward their licensure. In order to do that, in order for Hamilton Central to be able to provide that, we have to have submit and have an approved PDP plan. And so, for example, there's a teacher with a few years in and every year has to take a certain amount of hours. When we have superintendent conference days, the work that we do, because it's lined up, can count toward those hours. Faculty meetings can count toward those hours, so it's required. One of the benefits of being a part of the Madison Oneida BOCES is all of the consultants and programs that they have, we can put in our plan because we can do it. So we wouldn't have necessarily prices for consultants unless we are hiring them directly, but Madison Oneida BOCES would. So for example, I'm going to, if the lady, her name slips me, who's the special education expert, is doing a workshop, and our people go, that counts toward them. If they bring in Lucy Corkins from Columbia, and whatever she charges, $10,000, and our teachers go, she would be listed on as one of the consultants, but our teachers could go, and we get approved. So that's the big picture view, and that's what this is. We had this last year also, and we just revised it for this year.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to accept the donation of a clarinet with case to be given to the music department with sincere appreciation.
So moved. Second?
Discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion to approve the 2017-18 superintendent goals.
So moved.
Discussion?
Thank you for making some of the changes Thank you for making some of the changes that we discussed last month. It's nice to see those in there. And very excited about the changes to the budget process that you also included.
So again, I had the question about when it comes to goal setting. I like the goals. I have no issues with the goals. I have no questions or qualms about the goals. But in the goal setting process, we delayed our goal setting until strategic plan came through. So I just want to make sure that we all are aware of what we're doing when we approve and okay these goals if we haven't yet set board goals. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of the goals. I guess the question may be, might we be adding things, and are we all on board with how that goes and that whole process? So I just want to have a conversation about that and the process and all of those pieces as we move through it.
Sure. I think the strategic plan will clearly lay out some things that these different task forces have come up with that are consistent with how effective schools run and that are components of effective schools or systems or districts. What you'll find if you look at last year's goals and this year's goals is a train or continuity of things that are being followed up on. You'll also find, and I could predict it because I know how high functioning organizations operate, there are going to be things that come out in the strategic plan that are part of my goals. Just because I have been down the road of reform, change, adjustments, building on success. And so when the strategic plan goals and intents come out, the board will obviously look at it, have questions, make recommendations, or adopt it as is. And we can always talk about, after that, you put together an implementation team, and the board always has the right to say we can fund that, we can't fund that. And so it's going to be fluid. If the board says, hey, Dr. A, let's table all of your goals, and let's take these 3 goals from the strategic plan, certainly I would be open to that, but I think there'll be consistency in both. So there's always flexibility because you're the board.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? So do we want to vote on this tonight, given Ellen's comment?
I think it's okay. It makes sense that we have goals that we're moving forward on, and to not doesn't make sense. I just wanted to be able to have that conversation.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are going to the information and correspondence portion of the meeting. We have a report from secondary, elementary, and director of PBS. They're information items only. Do we need to approve those? Does anyone have any comments or questions on them?
Thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to superintendent's update. Turn it over to you.
Thank you. There's a lot, because I put in the budget piece that we'll talk about, and I also have put in the budget piece from the big picture from my visit to Albany. So we'll start with, I was invited to the Fast Company Innovation Festival in New York City, and as an invited guest sponsored by 3M. This festival is a unique gathering of business people in the for-profit and not-for-profit sectors to help facilitate meeting new people, absorbing new lessons, and seeing current opportunities with perhaps a fresh perspective. Part of my requirement of attending was to have lunch with 3M executives and other quote-unquote influencers. Two of the influencers that I had lunch with were Ms. Rita J. King and Mr. James Jorash. Mr. Jorash is the founder of Science House in New York City, and Rita is the co-director of Science House. I'm going to guess there are about 50 people in this room, and if we said there's a person in here who has 50 patents that they've created in the field of technology and science, we would be very impressed. Mr. Jorash has 700 patents that credited to him, and some of them are licensed to Facebook, which means they didn't buy it, and life is good. We spoke about, at lunch we talked about, the main conversation was about artificial intelligence and the impact that is going to have, that is having, and its future impact. One of the things when they asked me about what's going on in Hamilton, and I told them my personal philosophy about what should be happening in an organization that I'm head of, and that is to graduate kids who are highly literate, articulate, numerate, critical thinkers who can identify and solve complex problems in an ethical and just manner. They went nuts. And as employers, and I'd say fairly influential employers, they spoke about how critical thinking and problem solving is what they need and will be the divide between the haves and the have-nots in the age of artificial intelligence. Ms. King took a different approach, and I'm going to tie this back to how this could be positive for Hamilton. Ms. King takes AI, as they call it, artificial intelligence, as applied imagination, just using technology as an enhancement. And so they have this conversation, and it's very powerful. Just so happened, I come back to Hamilton and I go to the farmer's market and I run into Dr. Watkins. I'm very excited about the conversation, and I'm writing a blog on it. I'm just a little busy. And he says, well, can you bring them up here? I have money in my department to bring up these kind of people to talk about what is creative thinking, what is problem solving, how does that look, and how can we do some kind of work with these kind of influencers. So I've been in touch with Ms. King, and I have a meeting with Dr. Watkins and someone else at Colgate tomorrow at 2:30. I'll call in, and we'll talk about what the opportunities are and how we may be able to expose our children to these kinds of influencers, and perhaps even our faculty if there's interest. Certainly there seems to be interest within up the hill. And so that's, was very important, and I think a possible win for us to have that kind of brain power and battery power, lack thereof, in the field of technology. So that's a big one. Another big one, I think, was Red Ribbon Week and the power of partnership with the Hamilton Area Community Coalition. We collaborated, really, Mr. Dowsland and his staff, initiative to recognize and celebrate those who live substance free. Highlights from the week included just a couple local teams organizing spirit days with specific anti-drug themes, student leaders thanking members of the local police department, ambulance corps, National Honor Guard, and Community Coalition for Saving Lives. We had a national speaker, Ty Sells, of the Youth International, sharing students with grades 6 to 12, 7 typical arguments in favor of marijuana use. As a reward for the positive life choices, students signed the pledge and received the red wristband. We had a very nice article in the Oneida Dispatch. It was a very good week for students. We spoke to students in the hallway. We spoke to students during very nice and good partnership. I am going to go into budget right now. One of the things that we talked about is just regularly giving you information regarding the budget. One of the things that has been asked of me is to take the summer school budget where we usually ask foundations for and put it in the budget. So this is the first time that we would be doing that. So we are automatically, if we ran summer school the way we did last year, for elementary, it's 4 weeks and 4 teachers, and for secondary, it's 3 weeks and 2 teachers. We're adding $23,000 to the budget before go. Okay. Then what I did for you, and you're going to get this in a chart in your weekly update, and then we're going to have it posted, probably on the somewhere. I did an analysis of what it costs, and I didn't do it by position. So if someone says, let's increase such and such to go from 0.5 to 0.75, that costs $35,000, right? To go from 0.75 to 1.0, that's $18,000. Now you might say, hey, that's a less of a jump. Why is that? Because when you go from 0.5, which is half-time, to 0.75, you take the increase of salary, but you also take healthcare benefits. Okay? And then if you go from 0.5, which is half-time, to 1.0 full-time, that is $53,000. I will give you this in your weekly update in a chart, but I want to have that public conversation now, and I want to do it without a teacher title attached to it, because those are the things that kind of hit nerves. I just want to give you an overview of this is what it costs when we say add it to the budget. And so as we move forward, I'll be asking the principals of 2 things. I'll ask them, tell me what you need, tell me the justification, then I can tell you this is what's coming up, but they will obviously defend the justification or categorize it as need versus want. And the need would obviously be you have to be in compliance, and want is above and beyond in what we're willing or asking the taxpayers to pay for. So that it's really 2 sides of a ledger to determine how you want to spend, how we want to create a budget. So that's the budget part. I want to take you into facilities management. Part of what we've talked about in the past is buildings and grounds. And I'll speak a little bit about technology later, but we put $250,000 into technology infrastructure, and I'll give you a report on that in the status update. And that's good and that's important. We are at a point where we need to start talking about building project in terms of maintenance. And the last building project was completed in, I want to say 2007. It is now 2017, and these things happen regularly. So Mr. Crum and I met with King & King and architects because they did our last building project, and we have their, I think it's a two-year-old, 2015. We have the state planning document that tells us the conditions of our buildings and grounds. It's not an easy read. Matt and I are going to try and figure out a way to make it easier for the board to read, just in terms of just easy to read and not literally just, in plain language. And so here is the scope of the way it shakes out. Priorities always go to health and safety first. SED manual planning, in other words, what the state says you have to do to be in code, or then you always go to ADA compliance. Then the next one is any infrastructure that does not fall in. Then it goes to, believe it or not, educational or program needs. And that would tie directly into the strategic plan, which would be a guiding document in terms of what is it that you're trying to accomplish and what is it that what your needs are. And then you go to a wish list. These typically happen with district-wide committees, usually with Board of Education representation on the committee. And then you rank them all high, medium, low, the things on the list, and you get started on that. So we're having the conversation because we know that is the next step. When we go through the last building condition survey, it'll be kind of clear to you the status of what needs to happen, and that's important. The next, what we're working on now is we're working with one of the companies we've dealt with in the past to see, usually what they said is, find out what you can afford to do without any tax increase. Well, that doesn't work for us. That only really works when you have something that's expiring. So it's almost like if you were, the end of your lease was up and you were paying $500 a month on a car note and you needed a new car, well, you have $500 budgeted for a car. So no increase would be at $500 or less. That's not us. So whatever we do is going to cost money, and that's going to be part of a process. Technology update. Sorry, it's a lot, but a lot has happened. The fiber optic installation, which is part of the close to $50,000 that we approved, will be completed this week. The wireless access points are the last piece that really need to happen. The MORIC has not received them yet. As soon as they receive them, the installation will follow. There is the cyber review that is going on. I'll leave that out. The smart schools that you approved, the MORIC is meeting with Dr. Starr next week prior to filing. There's a lot of alignment that needs to go on. Dr. Starr did training with GCN, Global Compliance Network, just to show teachers what they will receive in the mail and how to kind of log in and do the first 2 trainings. And he's going to follow up with that. And everyone will have till December 30th to do 2, I want to say close to 15-minute tops, trainings on abusive behavior in the workplace and GASA. I think it's GASA, Dignity with All Students Act. Dr. Starr reports also that the majority of the help tickets requests now are about slow computers and something not working as well as it used to. Okay, there is one more piece, and this goes back to budget, and this might be the most important piece of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to share with you regarding budget. I was in Albany on one day, last week or this week, and it was very important part of the Madison United BOCES Legislative Committee. We met with some top people, one former Governor Cuomo's aide, and here's what we need to be really clear about going into budget season. New York State currently, based on the July quarterly update, is facing a structural projected $4 billion deficit for 18-19. That's equivalent of about 4% projected revenues. And just so that we're all clear, It's what New York State takes in helps determine what they give out. And districts like us and many others, state aid is significant, and certainly every dollar counts. That is where we're at now. Revenues seem to have softened further since the first quarter, and that may be related. They're speculating that high-income taxpayers are deferring when they get their income to benefit from the federal tax reform, but may not. So the speculation is, they called it the Trump effect. So with the current, and there's more on taxes later, with the proposed tax legislation, if you're a big shot, and let's call it Wall Street, because that's where a lot of bonus is, but also law firms, if you're expected to get a big bonus at the end of this year, if you can, you want to delay it into next year to see if the tax cuts are going to help you. That might not impact the people in this room, given the salaries and income levels, but that impacts the state. The other thing that is very significant in terms of lobbying and being very aware of is SALT D. And really what that would mean, it's the tax reform, and it would end deductibility of state and local income taxes. So when we do our federal taxes, we can deduct our state and local taxes. That would end, but it would also cap tax deductions for property taxes at $10,000. Now, raise your hand if you know somebody that pays $10,000 in property tax. Fine, not a lot of people in here. Not a lot of people. But what does that do? That the impact on that is those tend to be more wealthy people. And here is the sobering reality, because as a state we are interconnected. The state derives 42% of its income tax receipts from 1% of taxpayers. And so the concern is not who we know that pays more than $10,000 in taxes, but those who have the resources tend to have second homes in other states. And the concern is by passing that kind of tax bill, they can easily just move their residence and we don't get that revenue. So that's a concern that was expressed to us, and that we need to be very aware of. And there's going to be a press conference this week with one of the politicians to kind of push back against it. And this is not political. This is, well, as I tell you, it's not political. I'm telling you that is a financial reality for New York State to be aware of as it relates to income coming into New York State, as it relates to the kind of state budget implications. I've said a lot, more than I usually do, but with that, I'm done with the superintendent's update. Take any questions from the board.
Any questions from the board?
Thank you.
Okay, we have steering committee updates. Elementary steering committee.
The elementary steering committee has met twice since the last board meeting. We've done a lot of work on a really important project, and I'm going to turn it over to Kevin so he can explain. I got out of it. Easy.
Nice.
Thanks. So the elementary steering team has been working on putting together a team that's called Cartwheels. Ms. Mert helped us come up with that name. I think it's pretty cool. It's CART, and it stands for Consistent Advocates for Trusting or Relationships of Trust. And what it is it's a group. We're recruiting individuals in the community to come in and work with students that could really use a strong, consistent mentor for them. And we're looking to start small and build big. And the committee's worked really hard to put together an application, an interview process along with interview questions, some descriptors for the mentors so they know what they're getting into, and then really defining what the roles of each of the mentors would be, along with training for them. So we're making this a real thing. The real hope in this is that we have mentors in the community that will be willing to work with kids for at minimum a year. And the hope is that they see them through their school period. But so long, consistent mentors for students that really need it. So, and we're getting really close. The applications are done. We're ready to hand them out. So hopefully spread the news to the community. Applications can be found here at in the offices, but also all the steering team members have applications as well too. So we'll be looking to reach out to community members that are interested in helping a student that could really use a consistent advocate for them. So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and secondary, Bill?
Sure. We are in year 2 of our. If I need it. So we are in year 2 of our strategy session on combating chronic absenteeism and tardiness. We drafted a letter through the committee which was sent to all families, was shared via email, and then hard copy sent to those families who don't receive email. Giving some strategies outlining the effects of chronic absenteeism, how it affects academics and social emotional behavior. We also received some regional data from the CSO meeting, the Chief School Officers meeting. It's a regional epidemic that the CSOs are also looking at as far as a regional team, and we're going to continue to share that data with our steering team and continually try to get families to understand the effects of chronic absenteeism and tardiness. And it's real, and it's at an epidemic level, not only in this region, but nationally. So that we're going to continue our work on that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have an update on the HISP program. Who's that?
I can update part of it.
I'll take over after.
Got to the meeting, but it was the same night as the National Honor Society induction, so I only was able to stay for part of it. It was the first time I think a big group has really met in probably months, and so the 2 major pieces were looking at the draft policy that had been put together, and then looking at the communication plan. The draft policy got some updates and has now gone back out to the whole group to be edited and looked at. The communication plan is going through the same process. I think the big concern that came up that wasn't clear, that I thought was clear, so I'm glad we had the conversation, was that the intent of HISP was that those students would not be graduating from this district. That international students coming in through HISP would not be eligible to graduate with a New York State diploma. And so that's part of the communication and the wording and the discussion that needs to happen. And then the process will continue to move forward. But I think the bulk of the data is collated and put together, and it just needs to be cleaned up and processed before it comes back to the board. My question at the end from your email was about a possible visit to Otsego Lake Valley, and I didn't know what that was about, because I believe.
That was too soon.
Right. Yeah, I wrote it down, and then I said, you can overanalyze something to the point where nothing happens.
Right.
Everyone I've spoken to who has a program up has done far less than what we have, and it's up and running. I spoke to Dan Henner today at Otsego Lake Valley. They don't even have a board policy for their international program. Just so happens this year they don't have a student. They had it last year. And so, they didn't, their school attorney is the local BOCES attorney. And so we've put far much more into this than anyone else, including Mr. Holtz up in Newcomb when he started. So the reality is we'll put this together and we'll present it to the board with the understanding that this isn't the board that requested this. And so, we'll see how it goes, we'll see how you feel about it, and our job is to put the best effort forward and then see what happens. So that's where you hit on all of the points that I had. So I scratched it off and said, why visit when we can call?
Perfect.
Update on strategic plan.
Again, I think I'd like to publicly acknowledge although we're not supposed to say names, the fine young man who has helped lead the strategic planning process. The internal facilitator is, in many ways, the key to the strategic plan, because that's the person who touches so many people and coordinates. So thank you. The last time we met, our facilitator was sick. At the last minute, Mr. Raines and I did the facilitation ourselves. Mr. Raines did an outstanding job, and people thanked him and gave claps and everything. The next phase, because we are very much at the end of it, we are meeting on November 13th with the core team and Ms. Farrell. I spoke to her today. There will be a document that the core team looks over to see if there is anything that is off. They're not changing it, but they just want to make sure that everything is right. I'm asking the board now to pencil in the 28th to see if you're free.
Tuesday.
Okay. So guess what we're going to do? Pencil in the 28th and the 29th, just as placeholders. I will see what we can do, and what will happen is, the reality is, we don't know what will end up happening at that meeting, and so we'll put placeholders in there now, and if all goes according to plan, we'll see what works for the board, and then I'll ask you to call a special meeting, and obviously you'll have the plan in hand well in advance to review and be prepared, and I'll have to send you some information prior to that as well. That's where we are with strategic planning. And to kind of back up, it was the end of my first year when I was looking at different issues that I felt needed some attention. Some of it was special education, some of it was scheduling, some of it was RTI. There were a lot of things. And so by reaching out to the community and having grant money from the unfortunate designation of a focus district, we were able to bring close to 50 people together from across the community to work on this plan, which included teachers, parents, administrators, everybody. And so that's where we are at this point. We're coming to the very end of that. And I'm actually looking forward to it.
So can I, hold on. Okay, so when that comes to us, that would be the core team or the leader or whatever presenting it to us? Is that what that meeting would be? And then would it also be a public hearing where public can comment or ask questions, or it would only be a presentation to us?
It would be a presentation to the board.
Okay.
The board would be, and the board doesn't need to take action that night, as I spoke with President Fidel. It could, you could kind of move it to the December meeting, just this be the workshop where the board kind of gets deep into it, asks questions and that kind of stuff. Ultimately, you would be asked to adopt it, and I'll give you information and some kind of guidelines, as I indicated before. If the plan calls for a gifted arts coordinator, the board might say, you know, we'll accept this subject to budget availability and priority. That's always the board's discretion, because the financing and everything is great until you have to pay for it, and you got to see where you are financially in those kind of situations.
Any other discussion? Perfect, we'll look forward to that. Can we figure those dates out soon?
Do you want me to do a doodle?
You're out for 20 minutes.
Want a doodle?
So the good news is we don't know until the 13th whether or not we're ready for any of those days in the last week of November. So we can probably wait till then if you want. Okay?
Doodle.
Does that work for everybody?
She's gonna send a doodle poll.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Information update on the HTA Board BOE Advisory Committee.
I think this last meeting got the what would be an upcoming meeting, I think, has been tabled because there were some concerns and we're looking to reschedule that. So there's nothing new to update since the last meeting.
Thank you. And finally, as many of you know, the board, the 5 of us and Dr. Alston, went to Lake Placid in October to the New York State School Boards Association state meeting. And I just wanted to publicly thank everybody for making the time to go. It was important. It was really good work. We met with lots and lots of different board members across the state. We met and had great interaction and learned. So I was asking kind of everybody to just give sort of a elevator speech snippet of information that they took away, or some things that might have surprised you, or just in general, just some comments. So I'm just gonna start, we'll start here. I'll let Paul start.
Just real quick, the biggest takeaway for me, first of all, is I went last year to the conference and really encouraged us all to go, and I'm happy I went last year because it was, for me, far more rewarding than this year. I just happened to get the sessions that were problematic. For example, analytics, which I was really looking forward to. It's also not just the topic I was interested in, but it was from the school I graduated from. The technology didn't work. It's hard to talk about analytics when you can't see any analytics. There was also a gentleman talking about breaking the cycle of rural poverty, and he was a very passionate, energetic speaker from the New Berlin area. He spent his entire time talking about rural poverty and never got to his solutions on how to fix it. So those are the 2 oopses anyways, but the rest I thought was very interesting. There was a gentleman talking about recess and play and whole child education, in which at their school they've now the elementary school created 40-minute recesses for every student each day and talked about the benefits of that. But the greatest giveaway, the 2 greatest giveaways, is there were a couple programs talking about tax cut, cap, and budget, as well as school community partnerships. And what I found is that we are far ahead of what these schools that we're presenting were talking about. Partnerships in particular, we do far better with community partnerships than these schools were doing. And again, the one tagline from one program on board management is talking about board docs was that for boards, email is a great way to disseminate information. It's a terrible way to discuss it. And that we should never be discussing things on email. So.
Can I just also say something real quick? I just wanted to add that when we saw the program, and we did this at the September meeting, we very methodically attended all the sessions separately. So we hit everything that you could possibly hit. We weren't looking at each other during sessions. And so I think that was sort of a good divide and conquer. And I just wanted to just commend you guys again for doing that. But just give some clarification. So Michelle.
I went to 8 sessions. The supporting pre-K was a very important session that I went to talk to Kevin in length about it tonight. Also had emailed him minutes after the workshop because I was so excited and sent him all the documentation then. So that was very exciting to go to that one. Also went to one on ag science education and another one where seeing how far ahead Hamilton Central School is with Joanne. Very impressed with how many new schools are coming on board with their ag education programs, and that Johanna is actually helping mentor them, which is very great. So hats off to her for that. I went to one on school budgets, which was great for me, and a couple of the other ones were okay. Went to one on engaging parents and families, sent that information on to the PTO group, and Carly Murray has that information, so hopefully she can gain some information out of that as well. So it was very good.
We'll just keep passing. So I can go anywhere and learn no matter what, so I learned lots of things. And because I'm not the most concise person in the world typically, I think for me, probably the most meaningful was the talk about goal setting, the whole goal setting process, and I typed up my notes and shared that with everybody, because that was one of my concerns then, was how do we share this with each other. There was another about sort of process and procedure for when there are concerns about either any employee at any level within the district, whether it be administrative or otherwise, who either isn't meeting what they need to be doing, or they have done something inappropriate or whatever, and just sort of a nice standardized structured way to approach and document those things. ESSA, I went to a lecture on ESSA, which is the new version of No Child Left Behind, which was interesting and informational. One about, again, a relationship one, where one of the things that this group was doing was a parent university for high school age parents. So they would set up a night once a year and offer 3 or 4 or 5 different talks, and parents could sign up to come to 2. They were matching not only kids new to the district with buddies, but they were matching families new to the district with buddies. They were, had a structured new teacher and staff orientation and things like that. And then the other conference meeting that I went to was that Thursday afternoon 4-hour conference that I haven't actually really had time to process, that just had an unbelievable amount of fantastic information about communicating, which is something that we know we have struggled with. And I haven't even been able to process it yet, and so that's part of what I need to work on to get through, because it was phenomenal information. So.
I focused on curriculum, technology in the classroom especially, and reading remediation. So I went to 2 sessions on tackling reading gaps, and on using technology to be able to better individualize and differentiate instruction. I also attended three separate sessions on coding robotics at the elementary and high school levels. They were really fun, they were really interesting, but the main takeaway is that if we decide to go in the direction of further STEM and earlier STEM, getting our kids involved, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of people who are doing this. You'd be foolish not to visit these places or consult with these people who've been through, laid out a 3 or 5 year plan for how to responsibly and effectively introduce incremental decision making and coding. They talked a lot about the value of technology actually in not isolating people, but in fostering communication and problem solving. And Lego and these other big companies have these toys that that you turn into robots and such. So whether you buy anybody's particular technology, it was interesting to see how schools are implementing elementary and secondary technology, robotics, coding, etc., and how in fact the purported benefits are no different from what we're already doing in the classroom. Everybody's talking about critical thinking. Everybody's talking about collaboration, and the benefits of persistence and developing the ability to focus and stay on task. So it was a really nice mix of things that we're doing right, continuation of themes that educators have been doing for quite some time, but new ways to approach it. So this was the best conference I've gone to in a long time. It was really worthwhile.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fidel and I went to a presentation with Board Superintendent relationship that was really focused around Board President. And the person running the workshop was someone I worked for in 2001 when he was on the board, and he's still on the board. And, and a couple of board members are still on the board in that school district. And they spoke to, with all of that experience, he now works with NISPA and does trainings for boards. And think about what they've been able to accomplish in a diverse suburban school district. One of the things that they mentioned about meeting weekly to talk about school, the community, and something else. And Ms. Fidel and I have started that weekly meeting, and you really want to do it on the board president's time because they're already volunteering. And so that's something that we took away. When you look at this board, like it has turned over fairly quickly, and that really doesn't serve a community well. And so that's something that I took out of it, because I was shocked to see Dr. Frank still there. I was like, wow, but he's really committed and into it. Went to another workshop on special education law. It was very good, because they are always, with law, it's the latest case that sets the standard. And so when they give you the latest update, who was sued and why, and who lost and who won and why, those are real realities. Special education is law, and sometimes we don't think of it as that, but it is. And that same person was at the pre-law workshop, which I got into somehow. It didn't cost the taxpayer anything. But that gentleman will be here, I think February 9th, if that's a Friday, to do some work with our full faculty, gentleman named Ed Zarnicki, partner in his own law firm. And we feel if he's good enough to present to school boards across the state, he can come here and help us be really clear on some things we can build upon. The other thing I went to was passing of a bond presentation, a capital projects presentation. There's a science to it when it's done well, and like anything, there's a science, there's an art, and there's specific steps that you can take, like we talked about a district-wide facilities committee going around. And so it was overall extremely good, and you always just get to learn more things, whether you're a school board member or a superintendent who is a retired school board member. It's worth it. So, thank you.
And I'll just follow up. I went to, actually, I should be which one?
We're killing them all.
Sorry.
Next board meeting, we'll have the regular, nice, long
There you go. I actually misspoke, because Paul and I were in a session together, because I got closed out of the session. I didn't run fast enough from one building to the other, and they closed the doors on us. So you and I were in one session together. It was the special ed one. And we knew quite a bit more than most of the folks that were in the room. It was kind of a special ed 101. So that was actually good to just reinforce some things for us. I went to a session on rural school struggles and differences between, our sort of region, the rural schools, as opposed to the city schools, the downstate schools, and the different struggles we have. But some of the similarities we also have, because the common denominator is kids. And so that was a good session. I'm going to talk to the secondary school steering committee, because there was something about absenteeism and things they're doing to combat that at one school district in the upper Hudson River Valley that was astonishing. Really, really good work. And then, like Dr. Alston said, I went to some sessions on relationships between the superintendent and the board, the superintendent and the board's president, as well as effective boards and how we work together sort of as a newly formed team. And I should let everybody know, because we all stayed together in one house. So it was sort of like real world BOE in the old MTV days.
I've got the video.
So we were all on our jammies around the fire, but getting to know each other and learning to work with each other and understanding personalities and flexing the styles. And so that was really important. All laughs aside, it was important for us to really learn a little bit more about each other, what makes each other tick, what ticks us off, right? And so it just helped in our interpersonal relationships. And I think we came away with a better understanding of one another and in going forward working it as a team. And I think it's going to be helpful to us. So I, again, thank you for going. It's a long couple of days, and it's time away from family and work, so I appreciate it. I'm upset about that.
No.
Okay.
I think we killed all the mice now.
I know. Okay. The next item of business is the last opportunity for community participation. I will remind participants to state your name and come to the microphone and observe the code of conduct that I read at the beginning of the meeting. Okay. I need a motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second?
Thank you. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
7:05.